Galileo Galilei, the man who defied the church. What if telling the truth could cost you absolutely everything? In the 17th century, one man looked to the heavens and saw a truth so profound it threatened to shatter the very foundation of society. His name was Galileo Galilei, and his discoveries put him on a collision course with the most powerful institution on earth, the Catholic Church. This is the story of a man forced to choose between science and faith, whose trial ignited a revolution that's still shaping our world today. The world before Galileo, a universe of order and faith. To really grasp the scale of Galileo's crime, we have to go back in time to a world lit by oil lamps and governed by certainty. Before the telescope, the universe was a place of elegant, divine order. For over 1,000 years, everyone in the Western world, from the most celebrated scholar to a farmer in a field, knew their place in the cosmos. And that place was at the very center of it all. This was the geocentric universe, with the mouth first laid out by the Greco-Egyptian astronomer Claudius Ptolemy way back in the 2nd century. The Ptolemaic system wasn't just an astronomical chart, it was a map of reality itself. At its heart lay a stationary, unmoving Earth. Around our planet, in a series of perfect crystal spheres, orbited the Moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Beyond them were the fixed stars. And beyond that? That was the realm of God, the prime mover, who set the whole celestial clockwork in motion. This model just made sense. After all, you could feel the solid ground beneath your feet. You could see the sun rise, trace its path across the sky, and set in the west. To suggest that the Earth was actually a ball spinning at 1,000 miles per hour and hurtling through space, well, that sounded like madness. But the power of this model went way beyond common sense. It had been woven into the very fabric of Christian theology by brilliant minds, like Thomas Aquinas. The universe was a hierarchy. Down at the bottom was our corruptible, imperfect Earth, the realm of humanity and sin. Up above were the heavens, perfect, ethereal, and unchanging. The stars and planets were thought to be made of a divine substance called ether, moving in flawless circles. This cosmic structure mirrored the spiritual order. Earth was at the center, but this wasn't a place of honor. It was the sump of the universe, the farthest point from God's perfection. A journey upwards through the spheres was a spiritual ascent toward the divine. The Bible itself seemed to back this up. Passages like Psalm 104 state that the Lord set the earth on its foundations. It can never be moved. And in the book of Joshua, Joshua commands the sun, not the earth, to stand still. For powerful factions within the 17th century church, this wasn't just an astronomical model, it was theological truth. To challenge it wasn't just to question ancient science, it was to question the very structure of reality and the authority of Scripture. And it was into this world of interlocking certainty that Galileo Galilei was born, holding a simple tube of glass that would unlock a profoundly different and far more chaotic universe. The spark of genius, the starry messenger. Born in Pisa, Italy, in 1564, Galileo Galilei seemed destined to challenge the status quo. He had a brilliant, restless mind and a famously stubborn personality. His father, a musician, had taught him to be skeptical of established authority and to trust what he could see and measure for himself, a lesson Galileo took to heart. Though he started out studying medicine, his real love was math. The story of his collision with the cosmos starts in 1609, with rumors of a spyglass invented by Dutch spectacle makers that made distant objects appear closer. While others saw a military tool or a fun novelty, Galileo saw the heavens. He didn't just copy the design, he radically improved it, grinding his own lenses until he achieved a magnification of about 20 times unheard of at the time. He wasn't the first person to point a telescope at the sky, but he was the first to do it with such power and to truly understand what he was seeing. In the winter of 1609, Galileo aimed his new instrument at the night sky, and the universe that had stood for millennia began to crumble. His first target, the moon. According to long-held doctrine, the moon was a perfect, smooth sphere. But Galileo saw something else entirely. He saw a world. Through his telescope, the moon revealed itself to be rugged and beautiful, covered with towering mountains and vast dark plains he called maria, or seas. He even figured out how to calculate the height of the lunar mountains. This was a shattering discovery. If the moon was imperfect and Earth-like, then the sacred division between the corruptible Earth and the perfect heavens was a lie. But he was just getting started. In January 1610, he turned his telescope to Jupiter. He noticed 3 faint, tiny stars hovering near the planet in a straight line. He assumed they were just background stars. But when he looked again on the following nights, he saw they had moved with Jupiter. Over the next few weeks, he tracked them meticulously. The conclusion was monumental. These weren't stars, they were moons orbiting Jupiter. He cleverly named them the Medicean stars, honoring his patron, Cosimo II de' Medici. This discovery was a wrecking ball to the old model. A key argument against a moving Earth was that it would leave its moon behind. Yet here was Jupiter, clearly moving, and it was dragging 4 moons along with it. And even more devastating, here were celestial bodies that were definitely not orbiting the Earth. Galileo, knowing he had dynamite, rushed to publish. In March 1610, he released a short, electrifying book, Sidereus Nuncius, or The Starry Messenger. It was an instant sensation across Europe. In it, he also revealed that the Milky Way, long thought to be a hazy cloud, was actually made of countless individual stars. The universe was vastly larger than anyone had ever dreamed. Next, Galileo delivered another critical blow. He observed Venus. The old Ptolemaic system predicted that from Earth, Venus should only ever appear as a crescent. But the rival Copernican model, which put the Sun at the center, predicted Venus would show a full set of phases, just like our moon. Over several months, Galileo watched and saw exactly that. This was direct proof that Venus orbited the Sun, not the Earth. Finally, he projected the Sun's image onto a screen and discovered dark blemishes on its supposedly perfect surface, sunspots. By watching them move, he proved the Sun itself was not a flawless orb and that it rotated. With each observation, Galileo was building an arsenal of evidence. He wasn't just poking holes in the old theory, he was systematically tearing it down. He had shown the heavens weren't perfect, and that the Earth wasn't the sole center of motion. His fame soared, but so did the unease in Rome. The starry messenger had delivered his message. The question was, how would the guardians of the old world respond? The point of no return. The dialogue and the Pope Galileo's discoveries made him a European celebrity. But fame was a double-edged sword. While many celebrated his genius, others began to whisper. Philosophers and theologians loyal to Aristotle saw Galileo not as a brilliant discoverer, but as a dangerous upstart, threatening their authority and the bedrock of faith. At first, the church hierarchy was cautiously intrigued. On a visit to Rome in 1611, Galileo was treated like a star. demonstrating his telescope for influential cardinals and Jesuit astronomers. They confirmed his observations that the moons of Jupiter were real. But seeing wasn't the same as accepting the radical implications. The resistance soon organized. In 1615, a Dominican friar filed a formal complaint with the Roman Inquisition, accusing Galileo of promoting the Copernican view, which he argued was against the Bible. This turned a scientific debate into a theological crisis. The Church had to take an official stand. The man in charge was Cardinal Robert Bellarmine, one of the most powerful theologians of the era. Bellarmine was no fool. He understood the science. But his main job was to protect the faith, especially during the turmoil of the Protestant Reformation. Bellarmine's position was pragmatic. He told Galileo he could discuss Copernicus's theory as a hypothesis, a useful math tool, but not declare it as physical reality without absolute proof. And at the time, Galileo didn't have that final knockout punch. His favorite proof, based on ocean tides, was actually wrong. Without it, Bellarmine argued, the Church shouldn't rush to reinterpret Scripture. In 1616, the Inquisition formally declared the idea that the sun is the center of the universe to be foolish and absurd in philosophy, and formally heretical. Galileo was summoned and officially warned not to hold, teach, or defend the Copernican theory. Galileo, a devout Catholic with no desire for a war with the Church, agreed. The matter seemed settled. For years he kept quiet on the issue. But in 1623, something happened that changed everything. Galileo's longtime friend and admirer, Cardinal Maffeo Barberini, was elected Pope, taking the name Urban VIII. Galileo saw a golden opportunity. He traveled to Rome and met with the new Pope, who was a known intellectual and patron of the sciences. Feeling emboldened, Galileo proposed a book that would examine the arguments for both systems. Pope Urban VIII agreed, but with a few critical rules. Present both sides impartially. Don't declare Copernicus the winner, and most importantly, include the Pope's own favorite argument, that no matter what the science says, God is all-powerful and could have made the universe any way he wanted, in a way humans could never fully grasp. Galileo left Rome thinking he had the green light. He then poured all his wit and rhetorical power into his masterpiece, Dialogue Concerning the Two Chief World Systems. It was cleverly written as a conversation between three men. Salviati was the brilliant advocate for the Copernican system, basically Galileo's mouthpiece. Sagredo was the intelligent, open-minded layman won over by his arguments. And then there was Simplicio, the defender of the old Ptolemaic view. And this is where Galileo made a fatal mistake. Simplicio in Italian can mean simpleton. Throughout the book, Simplicio is portrayed as a bumbling, dogmatic fool whose arguments are systematically destroyed. The case for Copernicus is made with brilliance and force, while the old view is made to look ridiculous. This wasn't a balanced debate. It was a masterful takedown. But the most catastrophic misstep was what he did with the Pope's favorite argument. He took the Pope's cherished idea about God's infinite power and put it in the mouth of Simplicio at the very end of the book. After Simplicio had been thoroughly humiliated for hundreds of pages. When the dialogue was published in 1632, it was a huge hit. But when copies reached Rome, fury erupted. Galileo's enemies rushed to the Pope, claiming that Simplicio, the fool, was a caricature of the Pope himself. Urban VIII felt deceived and publicly mocked by a man he had trusted. The Pope, who had been Galileo's greatest protector, now became his fiercest enemy. The dialogue was banned, and Galileo's case was sent to the Roman Inquisition. This time there would be no gentle warning. An aging, ill Galileo was summoned to Rome to stand trial for heresy. The trial. Science on the stand. In the winter of 1633, a 69-year-old Galileo, frail and in pain, made the difficult journey from Florence to Rome. He was answering a summons from the Holy Office of the Inquisition. The man who had revealed the secrets of the stars was now to be judged by the guardians of faith. The trial of Galileo Galilei is often painted as a simple clash between science and religion, but the reality was far more tangled up in politics, personalities, and legal procedure. This wasn't a debate about the moons of Jupiter. It was a trial about obedience. The main charge was that Galileo had defied a direct order from the Church. The prosecution's case hinged on a disputed, unsigned document from 1616, which claimed Galileo was forbidden from discussing Copernicus in any way. Galileo, surprised, produced his own document, a certificate from the late Cardinal Bellarmine, stating only that he could not hold or defend the theory, a softer rule that he believed his dialogue followed. But with Bellarmine dead, the court, under pressure from an offended pope, chose to accept the harsher version. The deck was stacked. The trial itself wasn't a public spectacle. It was a series of 4 interrogations behind Vatican walls. He wasn't thrown in a dungeon. He was housed in relative comfort. But the psychological pressure was immense. He was alone, facing an institution that had already made up its mind. During the interrogations, Galileo tried to argue his way out. He insisted he hadn't meant to endorse Copernicus, but merely to explore the arguments. He even claimed he was personally unconvinced of the Copernican theory. Of course, this was impossible to believe for anyone who had actually read the dialogue. The inquisitors pressed him. In a moment of weakness, Galileo confessed, not to heresy, but to vanity. He admitted that maybe he'd made the arguments for Copernicus too strong, simply because he wanted to show off his rhetorical skills. It was an attempt to plead to a lesser charge of authorial pride to escape the graver one of heresy. But it wasn't enough. The Pope wanted a complete surrender. On June 21st, Galileo faced his final interrogation. Here, the court used its most terrifying tool, the threat of torture. It's a myth that Galileo was physically racked. He wasn't, but he was subjected to a formal threat, shown the instruments, and told they could be used. For an old man in poor health, the psychological impact must have been devastating. His resolve broke. The verdict, delivered on June 22, 1633, was no surprise. Galileo was found vehemently suspect of heresy. His dialogue was banned, where it would remain for nearly 200 years. His sentence was twofold. First, imprisonment. But the Pope immediately commuted this to house arrest for the rest of his life. Second, and more humiliating, he was forced to make a public abjuration. In the convent of Santa Maria sopra Minerva, dressed in the white robe of a penitent, the greatest scientist of his age knelt before the cardinals. He was forced to read a prepared text, renouncing the truth he had spent his life uncovering. He swore to abjure, curse, and detest the error that the sun is the center of the world and the earth moves. It's here that the famous legend was born. As Galileo rose from his knees, he is said to have muttered, "Eppur si muove," and yet it moves. The story is almost certainly not true. It would have been far too risky. But whether he said it or not, the legend captures the spirit of the moment. The Inquisition could force a man to his knees and make him speak a lie, but it couldn't change the truth of the cosmos. The earth moved no matter what any man, cardinal, or pope declared. The last laugh. A legacy of light, Galileo's sentence of house arrest was meant to silence him. Confined to his villa outside Florence, he was isolated and watched. For most people, this would have been a crushing defeat. But not for Galileo. The Inquisition had locked away his body, but they couldn't imprison his mind. In his final years, Galileo would produce his most important scientific work. Forbidden from writing about the cosmos, he went back to the physics problems that had fascinated him as a young man: motion, acceleration, and how materials behave. Now going blind, likely from years of staring at the sun through his telescope, the old lion dictated his ideas to his students. The result was a book called Discourses and Mathematical Demonstrations Concerning Two New Sciences, published in Holland in 1638, far from the Inquisition's reach. This book was the birth of modern physics. In it, Galileo laid out the mathematical laws of falling bodies, showing that objects accelerate at the same rate, regardless of their mass, a direct takedown of Aristotle, famously illustrated by the legend of him dropping balls from the Leaning Tower of Pisa, an experiment that likely never happened. It was this work on inertia and motion that Isaac Newton would later use to build his universal laws of gravitation. In a deep irony, by forcing Galileo away from the stars, the Church had accidentally pushed him to create the very science that would ultimately prove him right. It was Galileo's quiet, intellectual last laugh. Galileo Galilei died on January 8, 1642, still under house arrest. At the time, the Church's victory seemed absolute, but a movement had begun that no decree could stop. His work, smuggled out of Italy, spread across Europe, where scientists like Newton built upon it. Galileo the man became a martyr for free thought, a symbol of courage against dogmatic authority. The relationship between Galileo and the Catholic Church was never a simple case of science versus religion. Galileo remained a devout Catholic his whole life. The conflict was just as much about politics, bruised egos, and the clash of arrogant personalities. Over the centuries, the Church's position slowly evolved. In 1835, Galileo's Dialogue was finally taken off the list of forbidden books. But a full apology took much longer. In 1992, 359 years after the trial, Pope John Paul II delivered a formal address. He admitted that the theologians who condemned Galileo were wrong, making a tragic error in judgment. He even praised Galileo, saying he understood that the Book of Nature and the Book of Scripture were both written by God and could not truly contradict each other. Today, Galileo's legacy as the father of modern science is secure. His insistence on observation and mathematics changed the world forever. His story isn't just about the stars, it's about the enduring human struggle for truth. It's a reminder that while authority can demand silence, it cannot command reality. In conclusion, from the tidy universe of Aristotle to the dynamic cosmos revealed by his telescope, Galileo's journey reshaped our place in the universe. His life was a testament to the power of looking at the world for yourself and the courage to follow the evidence. The conflict with the Church, born of politics and fear, came to define his legacy, turning him into a symbol of the fight between authority and inquiry. But his real victory was the scientific method he championed, a method that continues to unravel the secrets of the cosmos to this day, proving that no power on Earth can permanently stop the quest for knowledge. And yet, it moves. If you were fascinated by this deep dive into one of history's greatest showdowns, subscribe for more journeys into genius on the Scientific Profiles. Was Galileo a martyr of science, or something far greater? Until next time, keep your curiosity alive.